Hello, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in to The Rich Life with Herb Martin and Danko Sidorowski. This part here, we're going to talk about some of the parts and pieces of a rich life. One part being reality. How do we define reality?
Itself.
Yeah, how do you define reality?
The culture really defines it. The individuals in it define it by the rules and regulations that this country is built upon. And it isn't an individual necessarily thought of thing. It is bound by the rules and regulations of our culture and the rules and regs. So what you might see is a person who wants to be successful in the society. They have to subscribe to the reality of the culture and how it's set up. If I want to be successful and I sing in the middle of a meeting, then it seems to be odd to most people in that room because it's an expectation of certain behavior. Now you can do it, but now you want to be successful, and the goal is to be successful because the reality is that our rules
To be
are to be
successful.
successful. And you can be odd, and you can do anything you want, basically,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a price to pay for it. You are acting out in an irrational way.
Right. And every culture defines
What is
that
right?
success
That-
differently.
That's right.
So if I'm in a hunter-gatherer relationship somewhere in South America
Mhm.
and I'm in a tribe, it defines it much differently.
Yes, in another setting, their rules are you do this, you do that.
You wear
pay
this,
attention, and
you
yes,
wear that.
yes. And to be more succinctly, is that in America, we define their articles, we can see it.
Mm-hmm.
We say, this is a chair, it's not a table, this is a table, and this is a chair.
Mm-hmm.
99% of the population would say, that's true, we can see this.
Mm-hmm.
And we have named different things in this culture, and if we go to a doctor, for example, and he asks you, what day is it? What time is it?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your home? Now, if you cannot say that, you answer that in a satisfactory way, and you say you live in a cave, and you don't live in a cave, or I don't know my name.
Mm-hmm.
Right away, we know what?
There's you're not in touch with reality.
You're not in touch with reality.
Well, what's interesting too, Herb, is
You have a mental condition.
there's a mental condition there.
It's very sick.
But on another note, touching on what you're talking about, reality and culture and things and ownership and rules and regulations, the American Indians didn't believe in property ownership. They didn't believe that was a factor of wealth,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But in American society today, they're not nomadic. They do believe that there is ownership and property and different rules and regulations that define our culture
Mhm.
differently. So to be successful in American culture and the culture that we're in today, we have to understand what it is, how it's defined in order to act properly and to do the right things
Mhm.
to be going in that direction. Is that correct?
That's correct. For example, we don't have to, but it's important to understand the history of the Indian And so, and also in understanding that, uh, we, uh, we've given a special place for the Indian in the society. We've taken his land and we've had wars. And today, the average Indian goes to the 6th grade, and there's a great deal of drugs, and 'cause we give them a check, and they bargained years ago to stay within different kinds of communities, and in a culture, one develops a new way of living and forced to, in a sense that if you want to practice your religion and your ways of the culture, and you have certain kinds of respect for the environment, and you pray to it, you're talking about a separate kind of acceptance of reality for them, because they decide not to be a full part of it, and have some of the same goals. And so, in a sense, that if the Indian is given money, subsistence, and taken care of, basically, and on certain lands, and so it's chosen to be within the context of the reality of the country today.
Which is very, it's based on time, which you brought up. Time, our time today defines us much differently. How we dress, what we say, how we act is much more different than it was 20 years ago even.
Absolutely.
And it's changing fast.
Yes. So the reality today is everybody wants to go to heaven and nobody wants to die. In other words, people want things, and I've had things, and in the society, they want to be successful, but they don't want to do the things that make you successful. Not by definition, your definition of mine. I want to be an artist. First thing, that happens, you say, how much money can you make for that? It's a value. So you're guided away from it. I want to be a musician. Well, today in the schools, the first thing they cut off is music. Well, and because of the economics. But the reality is, what do you want? In this culture, we have the freedom of choosing whether it involves money or not.
It's a tough place, and I feel that our children are trying to keep up with and understand themselves in a changing world that's moving so fast, and it's complicated. And to keep in touch with reality of a teenager is different than the reality of a 70-year-old man.
Yes.
The reality of a high school graduate is different than the reality of a college graduate, possibly, not always, maybe, but
it's confined in the mores and the values of evolutionary change, and that reality has to be bounded. It's bounded by. You still have to get an education to prosper, basically, in a changing society. And there are many things that people don't want to do, or young people don't want to do anymore.
it takes work.
Yeah, it takes work. I don't want Shakespeare.
Right.
I find it's the greatest thing in the world.
It takes work to do that, doesn't it?
Sure it does.
Yeah, and but life is like that, and I think our world keeps changing, and it keeps changing, and it's hard for our young people to keep up with it. keep up with the changing times, changing pace of where we're at.
Yes, and the point is, reality still, the idea of rationality and rationality is what you must pay attention to. And in this society, it hasn't changed in any different way. Basically, people are doing things that they want to do. They're learning faster. They're raising kids differently. But the reality is still bound. It is the reality to do. I mean, it's when you're irresponsible to the society, you're doing things like not accepting what the rules and regs are.
Well, what's interesting is in the past, when I was growing up, there was certain words you couldn't say on TV, you couldn't say on the radio, and now I hear them all the time.
Yeah.
That's an example
Yes.
of what's okay to say now over time, or how our perception and is different about a lot of things that weren't the same in the 50s or the 40s or the 30s or the 20s, and time makes that.
So,
and location, culture.
Going back to the definition really of reality is the rules and regs in the society, which are evolving all the time.
Right.
So if it's okay to say fuck you on the radio, and they say it, and they say the Myers bro, he says everything he wants to say.
Right.
But he's still successful. Why? Because people have changed and accept more things different. So the reality it shifts
all the time,
because it's based on how you define it.
It's constantly,
yes,
constantly shifting and changing. What I've noticed too is language, culture. A lot of it is moving at the speed of light.
Yes.
And people from before, I knew that I'd go down to Texas and they had a very different way of their reality compared to reality up in Michigan. But now with globalization, seems as though some of those things have changed a lot. And people are trying, I think, to identify what their reality is all the time.
Yes. Their reality, or what the reality is, individually. If you talk about individual thinking in the in the culture, the broad culture, which has been defined, and even in a medical way, some of the same things hold the society together. For example, if you still don't know some of the basic rules, if you break the law, you can expect that you're going to be punished. Those rules stand. The variances in the culture are, some people say it's my reality, but it goes against the reality. It's one reality, the rules and regs are acceptable.
The consensus of the community.
The consensus of the community.
And it could be a community of 1,000, 100,
yes,
2,000,
yes,
1 million. It depends on the situation.
That's right. And also, what is irrational? To argue like we're doing now. But the culture says, basically, we don't want you fighting. This culture is built with rules and regulations, respect, and all of this, that is not acceptable. All of this junk is not acceptable to the major culture. They say, get some things done.
Right.
And, you don't have to put a face on it or not. The idea is that if you do something illegal, you're going to be punished in this society.
Right.
If you want to be successful, then you have to pay attention of the rules, the Constitution,
Mhm.
the laws inherent in different states. They have different laws.
Right, different states have different
Yeah,
regions,
but-
different places.
But the reality still remains in a culture that embodies a collective culture,
Mhm.
and where people have to respond to different mores. They change. The exceptions are, for example, a lot of people pray and they say, God came to see them last night, talked to God last night.
Mhm.
And in reality, that person, if he says this, that's permissible.
Right,
So that's an exception to the rule.
right.
But now, if you say to yourself and talking to yourself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to rob this bank, and I get ready to do it, are you acting rationally or irrationally? If it's not self-preserving, it certainly isn't if you're going to stick up a bank.
Mhm.
You might get the money, but get the punishment
Right,
at the other end.
right.
Still, that holds. It doesn't vacillate because the changes in the society, unless there are major changes in the society that wants to redefine itself. You know,
Mhm.
you have to. There's a consistency of irrationality. For example, if I believe that we should have another war based on the information that people don't decide by trick or by whatever, and the parties want to decide this culture needs to go to war and it needs to go out and help everybody else.
You're saying they're not being real.
Now, I'm saying if the goal is to be rational, it becomes blurred based on the culture. Do we want another war that's going to last 10 years?
No.
Do our younger people want a war? Our younger people are different than the culture before. They don't like this idea of killing people.
Right,
And
like the
whether-
60s, they were anti-war.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
during
yeah,
time,
yeah.
it changes, it
So
shifts.
that let's put it this way: if the goal is to be successful, and the culture decides that we don't want to do something, we have individuals in our society that political kinds of things they want to change and give us stories.
Mhm.
So the culture begins to say this is acceptable or not acceptable.
Gotcha.
But the reality changes doesn't change.
Context.
I think that it doesn't change it. Context and the things that happen in the culture defeats or become irrational. If I kill more people in this war, and then next day that we're buying clothes from them, and we rebuilt Germany, and we got bridges falling down, over 50,000 bridges gonna fall.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, what are we doing?
We're not being
The
realistic.
reality
As a nation.
as a nation.
So
And the reality
nations
based
can be
off
reality.
That's right. So it's based off what makes sense. Is it irrational not to build bridges that are falling down on people again? Based on the goal, we want to protect our people, but we do the opposite thing. We don't make a decision about those bridges.
Mhm.
We talk about other cultures have trains going like 200-300 miles an hour, bridges that are brand new,
Right.
and
falling behind as a society.
our notion of what is rational and irrational. It's if you look at the setup in this country, uh, we want to make it the best country in the world. We're not the best country, and we say it. We sell apple pie and whatnot and all that. We're not all free, but we're constantly doing irrational things.
Because we're not in touch with reality.
We're not in touch with what our reality is. So we do irrational things.
Let me, just to finish off this piece about reality.
Yeah.
If I were to try to teach my 11-year-old daughter how to identify quickly with reality, what would be maybe a quick 2-3 things that she should check on? First is?
Oh, very good question. First thing you should check on is the parent. The first area of socialization is the home.
Mm-hmm. That for reality.
For reality.
Okay.
Dad, can I do so and so and so and so?
Mm-hmm.
And the parent, if they're correct, if they want to be help that daughter's or son be successful, we say, if you do this, you're going to be successful, and talk about that. If you want to go and have fights all the time, or you want to steal like some of my friends did, if you have respect. I never worried about going to jail when kids were stealing. I just couldn't hang him with them.
Mm-hmm.
I never sold anything because the rule was that anything you want, you can tell me about, you know.
At home.
At home.
Yeah.
So now, the second area is socialization is the schools.
Mm-hmm.
There are rules about life based on the reality of education and success in education. You have to study, you have to come to class, you have to
work
to do that. So, if you are talking to your children, that's the reality of today for success, is to follow in the lines of the reality of this country, and this expectation, its mores, its laws, its constitution.
But the kids are going to say, "You don't know anything, Dad. You don't know. It's different now. It's changed." And maybe some of it's changed.
Well, there's no question about it. Much of it's changed. You can do things that you never, or your dad never did, but that means yes, some of the things are more accepted. You know, you can wear
Shorter shorts or this or
the
that.
most embarrassing thing, I have to say this. I don't want to put this on the thing, but I'll talk to you about it later.
Okay.
Yes, you can do things. I'm not saying you can do anything you want in America. It's a free country. Yet there's a price
Mm-hmm.
to pay for. If you want to be somebody that talks back to the teacher, what happens to you?
Probably get sent down to the principal because
To correct you.
Right. Yeah.
Because the rules are that, hey, quiet when I'm talking.
Right.
You know? And okay, say that changes. So you got chaos. Can a teacher teach you with chaos? No. And then what happens to you? It's irrational to think you can get away with that.
Mm-hmm.
So now you want to be rational and successful, or to have direction.
Based on the reality around you.
Kids were stealing bikes.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out, friends of mine, wow. Well, my first place that I learned right and wrong was my home.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I got away from them and never fooled with them. And most people say, oh, it's the peer group. No, The peer group has a lot of influence on kids.
Sure.
But it's still irrational. But as your daughter might say, but Dad, they're not doing this today. Well, then you can make a decision for someone who's not developed enough to look at the reality of what happens and address it. I would have been shamed to be caught stealing the bike. That's nothing else mattered.
At home.
At home, nothing else mattered in that street, because I knew at this age even that you get in trouble when people did that. What am I going to say? Who lived with a father and mother who let me do what I wanted to do. As long as I obeyed them, I was free, and I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So even with our changing society, reality is the rules and regs of a culture that has been defined by people.
Right. A consensus.
Yeah.
A consensus.
Yes, a consensus. Not a perfect consensus, but a consensus.
Right.
Republicans figure they will. They comes from Hamilton. He was the major person in terms of the Republican idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was the other side that believed in freedom. So they believed in the money and to trickle it down to you and I.
That's reality.
That's reality.
That's reality.
Well,
Next we'll
continue.
talk about
Okay.
self-talk.
Yeah.